Hi, I'm Riley Moynes, author of The 4 Phases of Retirement and its sequel, The 10 Lessons. These books argue that some of the biggest challenges that people face in retirement are the psychological ones. The 4 Phases describes the 4 predictable and nearly inevitable phases that almost everyone faces when they retire from their lifelong calling. The 10 Lessons, which is subtitled How You Too Can Squeeze All the Juice Out of Retirement, is based on interviews with people who have successfully mastered those challenges and who are living lives that are meaningful to them, that are full of purpose, that often include service to others, and about which they are passionate. These are people who don't retire, at least not in the traditional sense, but who rather rewire. People who create new structures for their lives, who establish new relationships, and who find renewed purpose in their retirement. Now, what I discovered in conducting these interviews is that there was so little of their engaging and engrossing stories that I could include in the book. It just didn't do them justice. And that's what has led to this podcast series. Here, we're speaking with people who are squeezing all the juice out of their retirement. People with widely divergent backgrounds, experience, and expertise. People with stories that can inspire and encourage you, too, to squeeze all the juice out of your retirement. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation. Here we go. My guest today is Barry Hart. Barry is the founder of a charity called Water Ambassadors Canada. He's a water guy, and I know you'll enjoy hearing his story. Barry, thanks for being here. I'm really interested in your story. I know our listeners will be interested in your story. So let's start with a little bit of your background. Tell me a little bit about your working career to start off.
Well, thanks for having me, Riley. Great to chat with you. I was a high school science teacher for almost 30 years in the GTA, Toronto area. Really loved it. You run out of gas as you get a little bit older, and my wife and I, through real estate sales, family investments, had a chance to retire a bit early. So she was a French immersion teacher, so we both retired a bit early from teaching science and French in Toronto.
Okay. And that led you into the next phase of your life, which was what?
Well, I must admit, working is a very regulated part of your life. Mm-hmm. And so I read your book and I enjoyed it, is phase 1. What do? You have your own schedule, which is all right. You know, I can call Riley and say, hey, Riley, do you want to go for coffee tomorrow at 3? And I don't have to check in with the boss or a book. So we spent about 2 years of doing our own schedule, which is quite pleasant, I must admit. Mm-hmm. I'm a reasonably active fellow, so you can ski on a Thursday when there are no people there. You don't have to ski on the weekends. You can go to some travel places in the non-prime times, not Christmas, not March breaks, not college breaks, and there's nobody there but full facilities. Walking, shopping, recreation is in the slow, low times, which was very good. So we had 2 years of that, and at first it was quite enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. And then?
Well, here's this. I didn't realize it was an epiphany at the time, or became an epiphany. About 2 years into this, it was in April, so it was too hot to do cold things, and it was too cold to do hot things. And I remember I was in the house alone. Heather was somewhere, and the house was clean, laundry was done, the fridge was full, the bills were paid. And I remember I stood in the living room, and I thought, wow, there's nothing for me to do today other than read the book I was slogging through. There's nothing to do today. And it honestly wasn't a good feeling. It was scary. I thought, wow, is this going to be the rest of my life, having to choose what to do just to fill my day? And that just, nothing happened from that moment, that exact moment, but I just remember it wasn't a good feeling.
Right. So you're now involved as founder of Water Ambassadors Canada. Tell me a little bit about how you got started into that space, that water space. Where did that all begin?
So was several months after that moment where I thought, is this it, the rest of my life? I accompanied my wife to a conference, and we're involved, like most people, in some do-gooding and some charitable works. And there was an informal session with a bunch of people sitting around a coffee table, just sharing informally what they do. And my wife was involved with Trinity Western University out in BC. So she was one of the people that shared what she did, and I'm just sitting next to her supporting her in that. And I remember it was an hour, that 6 of us or 8 of us had to do it in an hour. So we had about 8 minutes each to do our spiel. And some really good causes, people were saying what they were doing.
Right.
And the last fellow talked about drinking water. And he was still very heavily involved with a private business in the States, and he said, just talked about how he's involved with helping give people clean water. And just the way he spoke about it and the impact of clean water, it just hit me. And I nudged my wife and I said, I got to talk to that guy. So after the things wrapped up in the informal hour, I went up to the fellow and just said, I want to hear more about this water thing that you're doing. And I guess that was the start, and that was in 2002.
Okay. And how did it grow from there?
We exchanged cards and phones and all this sort of stuff. So over the next year, I'll spread it over a year, I became more involved with this fellow, and he was on the board of Living Water International based in Houston. And so I went down there a few times and went to some conferences and speaking head conferences where people were talking about water and statistics and all this sort of stuff. And I thought, well, enough talk. Let's do something. I'm a do guy. So in the spring with LWI, a bunch of us went over to Ethiopia to check out the water needs there. And I mean, it's very desperate in Ethiopia. I mean, that was quite the baptism by fire, so to speak. Yeah. And we met with some water people and got engaged with fixing a monstrous water drill rig, and saw some water needs and traveled the country, and that was quite something. Came home, more talk, went to a drill training camp. The only drilling I'd ever been involved with was a bit of woodwork, hanging pictures, and at the dentist. So we learned how to, what's called rotary mud drilling. Living Water had a training camp in Houston where with a bunch of other, anything from experts to non-doers like myself that have never done it, we learned how to drill a well. And I found that whole thing quite fascinating. Mm. And a week after that, Heather and I were in Guatemala in some little boony little village, drilling a well for the folks in that village. And that was life-changing.
Wow. What was life-changing about it?
It's, I mean, have you got an hour? I mean, it was just, it was an event in the village. For them to have a clean water source was an event. Yeah. We panic here in the Western world if the power goes out for an hour, or heavens forbid the water goes out. That's crisis. In these villages, they don't have the crisis because it's out, period. So to be able to give people a well close to home, rather than having to walk miles or kilometers, whatever metric system you're in, rather than having to walk to get water, like it's the women and children who have to walk great distances, carrying buckets, and when they fill them, the bucket weighs about the same as not your carry-on, as your checked bag. And the UN says the average distance is about 6 kilometers, which is about 4 miles. So just think where you're sitting right now and draw a circle around you for 4 miles. And imagine carrying on your head your checked bag 4 miles every day to get water. So first you make the water is closer to home. So you're saving people huge time. You're saving them from vulnerability to assault. They're not carrying water as much, so spinal deformations in little kids and all this sort of stuff. And it's clean. Yeah. So they're not sick as dogs with diarrhea and all these awful diseases that dirty water can give you. So with them, this is a huge event. And we've been in places where when we finally got the water system up and going, the kids run across the little square yelling, "Mama, Mama, agua, agua." It's like Canadian kids yelling the circus. Well, I guess kids don't get excited about the circus in town or whatever kids get excited about today. But it was an event.
Right.
So when we did this, we get back to Houston Airport on a layover, and this is before cell phones and electronic memory phones. We had a few phone numbers stuck in our heads, and we had a stack of U.S. quarters, and we're just throwing quarters in these phone booths. Some of your listeners won't know what a phone booth is anymore, but we're phoning our friends on this when we're waiting for the flight, saying, "You wouldn't believe what we have just done." It's tearful. This is 2003. And it still touches me now. I mean, I just couldn't believe the impact of something as simple as giving people water. Mm-hmm. So from that phenomenal event that we were allowed to experience, from that, we stayed as Living Water for a while and then morphed into Water Ambassadors Canada. So we founded Water Ambassadors Canada. And we now, mostly Central and South America, but we've done work in Africa and overseas, other places. We now encourage Canadians to either participate or donate to clean water to change people's lives in these poorer countries.
So what's the connection between your previous life, your teaching life, and this new passion? Is there a connection? Was it sort of an extension of an interest in the past, or is this truly a kind of a rewiring for you?
Teaching, there's that root expression that people use, "Those who can't do, teach." And I fire back, well, maybe those who can't teach do. I don't know. Anyway, being a science teacher, I taught pretty well every science in Ontario curriculum over my years. So the chemistry of water, I get. The little bit of electrochemistry, which is involved with chlorination, I get. The idea of bacteria and critters and things dissolved in the water, I get. So a lot of my science background gave me a little bit of padding that when people were asking about water, why this, why that, is this a desal unit and all that sort of stuff, the chemistry, biology background I had did help. So I would say yes. And obviously teachers have to speak clearly and look at people's eyes and all this sort of stuff. So doing presentations or explaining to a village or a prospective donor or volunteer, I would say the verbal skills also have helped.
Sure.
So the knowledge and communication, I would say, helped the water career, yes.
Right. So track for me then, if you would, the development of Water Ambassadors Canada. How has that grown and developed, and what do you focus on now with that group?
So, as I said, we first were just drilling water wells with Living Water Houston. Little story here is, if I knew at the time, if I could look ahead to find out how much work it is to set up a registered Canadian charity, I wouldn't have done it. I mean, it is a lot of work. It's not just enthusiasm. I mean, all the work to get to the well site, that's a lot. The fun is in the fun. The meaning is in the country, in the village, drilling the well, talking with the parents and the kids. That is the pay dirt. But the amount of effort legally, accounting and set up a board and an office and mailing and letterheads and websites and huge amount of work and partnerships that crop up and partnerships that fail.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's life. Mm-hmm. So if I could look ahead, I'd have thought, sorry, I'm not doing this. But looking back, now that I'm way down the pipe looking back, totally worthwhile. Yeah. But it was more work than I planned, but totally worthwhile doing it. So, like I said, you have to have CRA prefers a mailing address, a physical place where you are there.
Right.
You have to get lawyers to set up agreements and registration packages and CRA numbers, and accountants have to caution you what that means, how you protect your charitable status. Website, what's the message you want to get out there, competing with all these other worthy causes, asking people for money. It's really interesting in our society. We're so blessed with money. Like, the poorest Canadian is wealthy compared to the average person in some of these countries we go to. if you can afford to go to Timmy's and buy a coffee, you're wealthy. And but to go to rich Canadians, and I mean rich, not rich in Canada, but rich relative to the world, and ask them for money. I heard years ago the most tender spot of the anatomy is the wallet. And you have to be bold, and in some cases people think rude, asking for money. Right. I mean, I can ask you how your family is, Riley, and how you're doing, and I like your shirt and this sort of thing. But if I say, Riley, I want $100 to help me put water in, it's like, whoa, slow down.
Yeah.
So that is not an easy thing, asking people for money. And they say, well, everybody's always asking for money. So it was with a lot of people a pushback on that. Oh, I give to this, I give to that, and all this thing. Right. But that was the work to set up, and that is ongoing.
Right. So you started drilling wells, but now you're involved with other activities related to clean water.
Yes.
Tell me about some of those.
So we have a good relationship with Living Water International Houston, and we morphed into Water Ambassadors Canada. So we are now a separate entity, registered. And we just found there were situations where well drilling, which is the most expensive way to give clean water, it's also not guaranteed. When you put a hole in the ground, you don't necessarily get water. And we've hit some dry holes, which is very sad for everybody. If you have water, you can clean it up. So I found an organization in Louisville, Kentucky, called Water Step. They had another name before that. Edge Outreach was what they were called before that, but they're called Water Step now. And they introduced me to a saltwater chlorinator. Now, here's where a little bit of chemistry comes in. So if some of you folks that are listening to this, if you skipped grade 12 chemistry, then don't worry, we're not going to get ahead of you. But the water chlorination, it electrolyzes table salt. And if you remember the table salt, well, everybody knows this. Table salt is sodium chloride. So if you put some table salt in this magic unit and connect it to a 12-volt car battery, the unit electrolyzes table salt, sodium chloride, into sodium compounds and chlorine gas. And we all know chlorine is bleach, and we know it sterilizes things. So you bubble the chlorine bleach gas into the water, test it literally with a swimming pool kit, drip, drip, drip to ppms, let it sit for a couple of hours, and then we've taken virtual sewage water or water at the side of the road, swamp water, disgusting water, put it through a chlorinator, and we're always the first ones to drink it. And salute, and you drink it. So that is amazing. We've also got filters that we've discovered through Water Step and other sources, household filters, and other filters that you can pre-filter the water. And I've just become very aware of all the other ways you can clean water if you have it at the surface. Now, drilling, if you don't, you drill. Yeah. If the well is broken, and we have a huge well repair program, the big expense in drilling is putting the hole in the ground and putting a casing around it. And if the mechanics break, unfortunately, the folks in these countries don't have the money, the expertise, the tools to fix the wells. Right. So we got heavily involved with well repair, where you can rehabilitate or fix a well or replace all the plumbing and all this sort of stuff. And it's very efficient because the hole is there. Once again, kids, teenagers didn't even know there was a well there behind those trees in that brush. But some old timer will say, "Yeah, I think that there's a pozo in Spanish. There's a well behind those trees over there." So we tromp across the cow pasture and get out the machetes, and sure enough, there it is. So you take off the head of the plumbing, tag it, and bloop bloop. There's water down there, and you can have it clean water, test it again. In a day, restore a well that's been broken for 15, 20 years.
Wow.
So well drilling, well repair, chlorination, filtration. And another component in this, there's a program called WASH, W-A-S-H, that the world is getting on board with. It's water and sanitation and hygiene. So give people clean water. Sanitation meaning go to the toilet in the right place. Hygiene essentially means wash your hands and keep the clean water clean. So we always try to integrate a wash component with the clean water. If you're going to the toilet and wiping yourself with your hands, and using a bucket that you feed the pigs with, and it's not a dedicated clean water bucket, then that sort of defeats the purpose. So, and it's mostly the women and the children that you teach, wash your hands, use dedicated containers, put some cloth over the food so the flies that are in the, because the feces and the poop tend to be everywhere, like the animals are kind of running free. Yeah. So you want to try and keep the food clean, and you teach them how to do this with what they've got. We don't talk about bringing in Lysol sprays and, and all the Shoppers Drug Mart technology. Just take some cloth. And when you leave, we've got instances where we get back to these folks and they say, the diarrhea in the kids is gone.
Yeah.
It's just amazing how simple thing like water it just works.
Yeah. Now, Barry, one of the unique features, I think, of Water Ambassadors Canada is that you send mission trips to Central America for the most part. I'd like you to comment about why Central America as opposed to some other places. But tell me about what a water mission trip might look like for a participant.
It's you put yourself back in my shoes back in 2002, 2003. Canadian donors, once to turn a person's heart around to actually see it, to go there and see it is different than a poster or a video. To have them, the sights, the sounds, the smells, the little kids all over you like dirt playing with you and touching your North American, in some cases white skin, but we have all, from Canada is very multiracial, so we have all these Canadians come down, but the kids know you're not from there. I mean, you've got shoes and clothes and all this, so they're all over you with the big smiles. And obviously going to some of these countries that most of us can't put on a map too easily, there's a little bit of reluctance to go. And you've heard of all these horror stories of the dangers and all this sort of stuff, and you have to be prudent. Most countries you have to be prudent, and you have to follow the leaders' directions. But it's tougher to come home. The most stalwart, tough Canadian usually has dirt in his eyes and has to wipe away a few tears as he leaves this village. So to duplicate that experience where you break, the old expression is you break out of your bubble or your little circle, your comfort zone, whatever expressions there are, and to travel to these countries. And in some cases, you're driving by at the coastal resorts that you would normally feel more comfortable with, where the armed guards have the big steel gates. Some of the countries we go to don't have resorts. They're just what they are. But so you drive by those places, and you get further into the boonies, down little back dirt roads, staying into places that we call hotels, and you have to be tolerant. There's never hot water. It's gravity-fed shower with whatever water comes out. The food is basic, but it's clean and safe, and the beds are basic. AC are two letters in the alphabet. They don't always mean what we think they mean. So you have to be wary of that. And we try to house our volunteers in a reasonable accommodation as best we can do. And then when they go to the village, and you're driving in the village and you see all these faces looking at the foreigners, kind of these stern faces looking at these foreigners as they drive in, and they know you're not from there. And as soon as you smile, wave, and say, hola, their face is all teeth. And they're all waving after you and smiling. So as soon as the ice is broken, and like I said, mucho gusto, you meet these people. We try and have it that they feed us. We give prescription, no veggies, please, no uncooked veggies because of the water. We don't want to get team members sick. Playing with the kids, the ladies invite you into their houses. You see their kitchens and how they live with open fire cooking. Show you their kids, their grandkids, their families, the grandpa, the grandma, and how our food grows. I mean, pineapple and sesame and all this sort of stuff. I mean, it doesn't come in bags. It's grown, and to see how sugarcane is harvested. So it's a cultural, mind-blowing experience, and you're giving clean water, and you know it's doing good, and you feel a stirring in your heart when you finally say adios. If there's time, we do integrate a travel culture day. If there isn't, then we don't. We work on the well or the projects. But if on the way back to the airport, if there's a museum or a tourist site or a volcano or a beach or something that we can see, that folks can see culturally, so the country can give back to you and show the beauty and the culture of the country, we do that. And when you get back to, let's say, Toronto or any Canadian city, and everybody's ripping around on the highways going fast. Now, I don't know what the guy in the car next to me's done, what they're going through, but you almost feel like you want to stand on a tall building and just yell, "You people have no idea what I've just seen and done." And you just want to scream at the top of your lungs to say, "Listen to what I've just done."
Yeah.
So to see other folks go on a mission trip and to go through the same metamorphosis that we went through, it's wonderful.
Right.
It's frustrating because it's one person at a time, one trip at a time.
Yeah.
So if that answers the question, that's what the trips are.
What countries do you send missions to?
We've mostly all through Central America and the northern parts of South America. All the little countries in Central America we work in. Unfortunately, Nicaragua is going. There's turmoil in some of these countries. Obviously, there's turmoil if the countries don't even have clean water for their citizens. Right. There's a bit of corruption and goofiness going on in those countries. Guatemala had its trouble 20 years ago. We're big in Guatemala. Honduras had its troubles 15, 20 years ago. We're big in Honduras. Guatemala, we were thriving in Guatemala with well repair and well parts and filters and chloros. Now they're going through some trouble. So we've had to reduce our program in Nicaragua to just well repairs with a skeletal crew maintaining what we've installed, and we're upgrading in Honduras. We've done some work in Haiti with other partners, and we're presently in Dominican Republic doing water chlorination in the prisons, and that's very interesting. Just a little aside, every place we work in, we work with some on-the-ground representative of a mission agency, a church, an NGO, a non-government organization in that country. And we contract with them for transportation, translation, accommodation. So they have we have a legal CRA agreement, Canadian Rev Agency. It's called a joint ministry agreement to make for accountability of our funding to our donors. So that's all legally signed off with lawyers and all that stuff. But they meet and greet. And so every country we have a different partner on the ground. And so in Dominican, for example, a fellow is working with Christians in the prisons. And the admin in the prisons in Dominican have noticed that if you have Christian ministry in the prisons, the behavior of the men in the prison vastly improves. And they've also noticed with Christian ministry that the recidivism rate, which is a big word, the return of these fellows back to jail drops precipitously if they have some religious spiritual training. And also to have these clean-cut Canadian geeks come down and give them clean water. And they ask, why are you here? We're saying, well, we're here to give you clean water. You're a brother in Christ. And we teach them how to do the chlorination. And through my phenomenal skills in Spanish and their phenomenal skills in English, we relate. It takes a couple of days to put a chlorination system in and meet the fellows and take pictures with the admin staff and leave. We've done work in Western Africa or Central Africa, in DR Congo, Uganda, Kenya. We've sent Sawyer filters into Somaliland and Uganda. And we've also done some disaster relief in some of these big disasters in the world. We've sponsored our friends WaterStep with chlorination in the Philippines when Haiyan blasted through there years ago, and the mega tsunami and all this sort of stuff. But mostly Central and South America, Colombia, and we're actually doing some work helping Venezuelans right now. They're in Colombia, helping them cope with the sadness in Venezuela. And we're sticking mostly north-south. To go to Africa, even though Africa on the do-good map, Africa has glam. And Africa definitely is an amazing place. When you're in Africa, the sights, sounds, smells, and the music and the dust and all that. I mean, you're in Africa. But it's a long haul to Africa. Right. And our mission trips are usually 8 days long, and folks have given up a week at work.
Right.
or vacation time. So it takes you about 4 or 5 days to recover from going to Africa. So north-south, it's usually just 1 or 2 hours out. Right. So I figure Europe can look after helping out Africa, and North Americans can help out going north-south. So that's the big reason.
When you go on a well drilling mission trip for about a week, how many wells could you reasonably drill during that time?
A team of 6 to 8 people on a drill, it takes at least 4 days to do a drill. Right. So on a drill trip or drill team, you're doing one well. One well. And it's about a 15% fail rate, where you put right. down a big hole right. and it's nothing. It's just clay.
Hope for the best.
So that takes a week.
Right.
On a well repair, depending on what needs to be repaired, sometimes with larger teams, we split into squads. So if you have a team of 8, you tell the in-country host, rent an extra truck, an extra driver, an extra translator, and we'll split a team of 8 into 2 squads or micro squads of 4. And our in-country fellows have to get the meals and beds ready and for the team, but then they also have to scout out the villages. And a squad of 4, depending on the geographical location, can repair 1 well every half day, so 2 a day.
Wow.
So if you've got 2 squads,
yeah.
you can, if it works out perfectly, you can do 4 wells a day. In 4 or 5 days, you can restore water to 20 villages.
Wow!
And the average village is we've done systems where you give water to 50 people. We've done systems where you give water to 1,500 people.
Wow!
So let's say the average is 200 to 300.
Yeah.
And you do 20 of those in a week. That's thousands of people
Absolutely.
that can get water
yeah.
in a week.
In a week.
And when you fly back to Canada, you think thousands of people. Just try and put that in the terms of your town, your neighborhood, your business, your school. Yeah. I mean, it's quite gratifying and very humbling
Absolutely.
that you can do that. And chloral systems, by the time you sleuth the plumbing, set it up, takes a day, and training takes a bit. You can do about 2 a week with a small team on a chloral system.
Okay. So the impact, the leverage is huge potential.
Magazine Christianity Today said the best ROI, now I know these terms now, but that's return on investment. Mm-hmm. The best ROI on humanitarian work is clean water. You help hundreds to thousands of people.
Yeah.
And my favorite saying is contaminated drinking water is the biggest cause of death and disease in the world. Mm-hmm. We know the cure. It's just give them clean water. Right. We're not looking for a pill or a medication or magic surgery or radiation right. or anything. You just give clean water. Right. And we know how to do that.
Right.
So best ROI on your donor dollar is water.
Right. And by many standards, it's a very inexpensive solution, isn't it?
Very.
To that huge problem.
Yeah. And another thing we do to clarify is once we've got our in-country guys and girls trained, if we've got enough donor dollars and if we've got a trusted partner, they've got the tools and we've ordered the equipment and they've got it sitting there in a locker or a trailer down in the country, between teams, we sponsor our in-country people. They go out and do repairs while we're not there.
Right.
And then when teams come down, the teams do the repairs, and that hopefully moves hearts to help the program going. So we do both. We're right now about 60-40 teams do the work and 40 of in-country. We want to raise the ratio of in-country people doing sponsored projects. We still need the money. I mean, hate to say it, folks, but it takes money to do it. Yeah. And so our in-country teams are doing about 40% of the work right now.
Mm-hmm. So, Barry, you've been involved with this activity now for 20 years or thereabouts. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about what this involvement has meant to you personally and how it's impacted your life.
Well, I got to be really careful here that you don't turn into a Pharisee or an egomaniac. I mean, I'm a baby boomer. I'm 70, and I still see some of my buds, and I play old geezer hockey up in my hometown, and so some guy says, "Well, guys, I'm leaving for a month. Where are you going?" "Well, I'm going to Arizona. There's a lot of golf down there." Or "I'm going to Florida," or "I'm going on a cruise." And that's wonderful. These people have worked hard in their lives, and they're doing that. And And sometimes I'll say, well, I'm away next week, and they know what I do. They say, well, where are you going this time? And I say, well, we're going to Guatemala. We're putting in a water system. And it's just different. I mean, I do have a wonderfully blessed life. So I do go on little family ski trips, and I have been on little river cruises in Europe and all that. So, I mean, that's wonderful things to do. But to have this element of purpose and meaningful activity, and I got to be careful. Don't start boasting about it, because that's not what the purpose of it is. No. But I'm proud of what we do, but not in a prideful sense. In a sense of, wow, why would some couple of retired teachers, why would we be allowed to experience such a magnificent joy of giving clean water to these other folks? I don't golf, so I get mixed up whether you keep your head down in golf or your head up in hockey, whatever. I get it mixed up anyway. But so that's what we do. So I'm a water guy, and I also do those other things. I'm a retired teacher, but I'm now a water guy. And if somebody's got 10 seconds or 10 minutes to listen, I want to get people involved with donate, volunteer time, or join a water team, or do something significant with your life with the gifts and talents that you've acquired. And as I've said to you many times, Riley, the baby boom generation, we are the most blessed group. We didn't go through depressions like our parents. We didn't go through W1 and 2 like our parents and grandparents. All we've known is bigger, better, higher, more, faster. We've seen Canada grow and get blessed. Well, now what? You've got decades of time. You've got decades of talent. You have money in the bank. And what are you going to do with all this spare time you've got? And to integrate some do-gooding, some meaningful do-gooding with the leisure activities that you love to do, it'll add an element to your life, a stage 4 element to your life that will give you purpose and meaning. So when you wake up in the morning, you say, yeah, I got to meet so-and-so today because I'm joining a water team in 2 weeks. Right. And so it adds an exuberant, exciting, meaningful day to your life.
Well, my experience with Water Ambassadors has so far been kind of academic, but I'm looking forward to my first water mission in November, and really, really looking forward to it. Barry, thank you so much.
Well, really appreciate it. Blessings to you, Riley. I appreciate what you're doing. Thanks.
If you'd like to learn more about Water Ambassadors Canada, and perhaps even consider joining a water mission team, you can contact them at waterambassadorscanada.org. I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and that you'll join us again next time as we help you squeeze all the juice out of retirement. I'm Riley Moynes. Bye for now.